The landscape of financial planning has changed quite a bit over the years, and with it has come a bevy of products and services created to give financial advisors the tools to better serve their clients and assist them toward a healthier, sturdier financial future. Over the years, we've talked to many guests about some of these products and services, including Matthew Teel, Miles Lambert, Jeremy Huss, and Nico Van Vakas. On this episode, we look back on what they had to say about them. This is Paul Blanco's Small Steps, Big Wins. Financial advisor, coach, author, and professional speaker, Matthew Teel.
My career really evolved because I started building a financial advising practice, and over time was drawn kind of as a skeptic to the insurance side of the practice. And I like to use that word skeptic because I was really apprehensive about going to a place where insurance was a prominent part of the environment, was a prominent part of the conversation that was happening at the client level. And so I was cautious as to where that fit into my business model initially. And I think that's a really important backdrop because I had to prove to myself internally that it fit for clients, that it made sense for clients, and that it was a really valuable element of overall planning.
Well, it's interesting that you said that, knowing your career very well. I never knew that story. And when we fast forward and you started becoming a life insurance wholesaler / specialist, as I saw the industry changing, you did that for advisors. So, but you had already experienced that. And so what happened when you were a skeptic? What clicked and what made you think that, oh my God, this is good stuff?
Yeah, I had to come to it on my own. So I'm a pretty intellectual person, pretty analytic. And so I think through the process of financial planning and doing financial planning with clients, learning about their goals, their aspirations, their dreams, their concerns, I really had to understand that insurance played a really vital role in basic financial planning, all the way through the spectrum to more advanced financial planning for high net worth individuals, business owners, and all different types of clients. I think the point you made about working with advisors, it was really critical for me to come from that perspective, because the reason that we transitioned into my role into wholesaling or working with advisors with their clients is that most advisors, even in our organization, were really focusing more and more on wealth management. And part of the challenge was that became the primary modus of what they were doing in terms of the planning with their clients. And we wanted to ensure that the insurance planning wasn't falling by the wayside. So having come to insurance naturally, proving to myself empirically that it worked, that it made sense, how to do it correctly in the context of overall financial planning was really critical for me to be able to relate to advisors.
Yeah, I mean, I have a whole different story about you now on that skeptic side, which is really cool. So you were a financial advisor for about 5 years.
Yes.
And then you went into more of this specialist wholesaling role. And the insurance business is confusing. There's a lot to it. And what was some of the first things you did when you got into that role?
Yeah, well, I think the confusing part of it, candidly, is probably a big part of the draw for me. I think that what made me passionate about going into the insurance side of the house was that insurance is probably one of the more misunderstood and misapplied elements of financial planning.
I agree.
And so I kind of try to embrace the mission of changing the perspective, both with clients, but also, and this is increasingly true now today, with advisors around what quality insurance advice means, and how it should be deployed in the context of a financial plan with clients. And so when I started having conversations with advisors around the type of work that they were doing with their clients. It was radically similar to the conversations that I was having with my own clients immediately before that. So it was a pretty easy transition into doing this similar type of work, just showing them how we had been utilizing insurance as a tool in a financial plan with a client and really, generating great results with it.
So let me ask a question. When you think of the word wealth management is a big buzzword in our industry today. And when you think of people building big books, and obviously the market's been very different the last couple of years. Is it hard for the advisor to be all things to all clients? Is there a lot of them that are really effective at that today? Or do you think that the model that you're building and what you're doing for FAs is really the future of our industry?
Well, I certainly hope it's the future, because we've really built and engineered our business around this idea that it is very difficult for an advisor to be proficient and be an expert in all areas of planning.
I agree.
I think the other thing is that it would be very rare for an advisor to be passionate about all elements of planning as well. And one of the things that I think has become really important to me is to align things that you're good with things that you're passionate about, because it never gets old doing it. And so from my perspective, it is really hard to be a great wealth manager, a great asset allocator, a great comprehensive financial planner, a great client manager, a great relationship manager, and be a great insurance practitioner all in the same person.
Besides an entrepreneur, right?
And be an entrepreneur and building a business and marketer and all the things that have to go into being in this industry. And so from my perspective, I think that there's definitely this shift towards specialization, and advisors and advisor teams have a decision to make. Do they have someone or a team internally that they can rely on, that they can integrate that element of planning? And in my case, it's insurance. Or does it make sense for them to outsource it with a practitioner and a team and a business that understands what they do for a living, the way that they interact with clients, the type of planning that they do, the type of challenges the clients are going to have, the types of, pushback and objections that they're going to get from clients, and make that a seamless and integrated part of their overall practice.
Yeah.
Executive Vice President at Bright House Financial, Miles Lambert.
When I think of financial services, it's a huge word that we use, right? Like we'll say we're in the insurance space, or we're in the wirehouse, or on Wall Street, but it's all considered financial services. When you think of from when you came in to today, what are some of the major changes you've seen, in the evolution of this industry?
Yeah, a lot has changed, but a lot is still very similar as it relates to when I started back in the business 25 years ago. I think the biggest change that I've seen is on a few different fronts. The first was that 25 years ago, you led quite a bit with product. And I think what's happened over time, for the benefit of our customers and our clients, is that more often than not, most of your better advisors now lead with planning, and the product solutions become a part of the planning process. So I think that's been a big shift in the industry. The other shift that's been quite noticeable is the shift from more commission-based products to fee-based structures.
Sure.
And I think fee-based structures in a lot of instances make sense depending on whatever it is the advisor and the customer are looking to accomplish. And I believe that trend is only going to continue to grow. And I guess the last thing I would say is kind of the evolution of simpler, lower cost products is very much more in vogue today, with passive type of investment opportunities at lower cost structures than it was in decades past. So those are a few of the trends that I've really noticed, throughout my career.
Well, it's interesting because when you think about the business, 25, I've been in the business actually, this is my 33rd year in the business. And, started out very similar to you in the life insurance vertical sales space, right?
Yeah, sure.
And I've watched the evolution. Do you see with planning now today that it's very hard to be a siloed advisor and not be able to offer all of those products that you just spoke about, a lot of different products, right? Do you think it's very difficult today to do that on your own?
Yeah, look, I think you can always build out an expertise in a few product areas or one product area to be a specialist at some of these organizations. I think being an advisor, it would be difficult to just kind of be honed in on a couple of different products. I think you have to take a comprehensive, holistic planning approach to meet your customer needs. Now, there are obviously different customer segments, right? So the level of planning may change based on net worth or where they're at as it relates to their life cycle. But I think generally speaking, to be a successful advisor in today's market, you have to have an approach that's very holistic as it relates to whatever the wealth management and planning needs of the client are.
We look at this industry and we look at the trillions of dollars that are going to be in motion in the next 20 some odd years. We talked about the boomers for many years in our industry. Like, where do you see the industry heading? And, I've always been one of the people, when I hear a lot of noise around the industry, you're one of the first people I call to say, hey, Miles, what do you think's going on and where do you think it's going? So give me a little insight on what you're seeing and what you're reacting to.
Yeah. So I think specifically as it relates to, protection type products, life insurance and annuity solutions, I think we have to continue to evolve as it relates to providing education around the benefit of these products, right? I think, unfortunately, there's been a number of other organizations that talk about some of the shortcomings associated with these products. I think we got to make sure that, our customers, our clients see the value in these products. They understand the benefits that these products can provide. So I think specific to the insurance business, that's something that we need to continue to work on. That's general education. As it relates to overall, financial services, overall wealth management, I think a couple of things come to mind, right? I think you're starting to see convergence as it relates to different support models. And I think that's only going to continue, right? And we need to take a step back and think about what do consumers want, right? And consumers want to do business on their terms. And their expectation is that it's up to us to make sure that doing business with us is easier now than ever before, right? Customers, clients, they expect, a modern digital approach as it relates to the experience they're looking for from whomever their provider may be. So I think that you'll continue to see the evolution of our distribution support models continue, meaning that customers are going to want some experience as it relates to transactions on their own, being able to do it digitally and virtually, right? I mean, it's table stakes. If you want to buy a stock now, right? If you want to sell a stock or buy a bond, there needs to be digital tools in order for a customer to transact. But then when you think about the full spectrum of what a client may need, right? There's comprehensive planning. We keep talking about planning that needs to happen, right? It could be retirement planning, estate planning, whatever the case may be. I believe customers are always going to look to the advice of an advisor when it comes to more complicated financial planning matters. So what does that support model look like? What does that omni approach look like from wealth management organizations so that they can serve, the full spectrum of what the customer's experience needs to be? But I guess in addition to that, what I would also say is I think the industry needs to continue to evolve as it relates to simpler product, right, being offered at a lower cost, right? And we talked about that a little bit earlier. I think we've done a good job of that on a number of different fronts as it relates to different product categories, as it relates to making the products a little bit simpler for the customers to understand. That also helps with the education process we just talked a few moments ago. And that the access points to get these products are less expensive than they've been in the past. I think that's how our industry continues to evolve.
Barnum Financial Group's Vice President of Financial Planning, Jeremy Huss.
What's your team like and what do you guys do and how do you help advisors? And,
Sure.
And then obviously, how do you help clients?
Yeah. So I think I'll probably start with the client side first. And I think people equate the financial planning sometimes to going to the dentist, and nothing against dentists. Everyone wants clean teeth, but generally it's not an enjoyable experience. So really my focus from planning, position planning to advisors and ultimately to clients is how do we keep it easy? How do we keep the client engaged in the process, get them engaged early, make it easy so that we're always moving forward and helping the client take action ultimately. So I think that goes through everything that we do as far as how we support advisors. How do we keep the process easy but impactful to clients? So I can you want me to walk through the financial planning process as far as what that looks like? So really, it's a 4-part process from a meeting standpoint. So intro is really just kind of getting to know clients and understanding what's important to them, and then really educating them as far as the different ways that financial advisors can help them, and letting them decide what type of relationship is best for them. And then if it's planning, moving forward in that engagement. And I believe in getting the client to enter data for themselves. So it really gets them engaged in the process early. It also is way more efficient from an advisor perspective. It's more efficient from my team perspective. So it's a win-win-win all the way around.
Well, it's interesting on that point. I want to just make one point on that. So I've had a financial advisor for 15 years. Mm-hmm. And, I heard a thing about Tiger Woods one time where Tiger Woods was at the time the best player, 3 coaches. And I'm like the shoemaker's kid here. I'm like, I think I know it. I'm running this firm, but I know finance, but I can't really be my own advisor.
Sure.
But so I've had that, but I've never taken the time to enter the stuff. So during COVID, on some downtime, being home all those times, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to just go through every piece of investments, insurance. And honestly, it was lots and lots of accounts. Mm-hmm. And it gave me a very different appreciation.
For sure.
For what my advisor does, but also for what, I have in front of me. And I have this puzzle.
Right.
And so I think that's a good strategy, having the client do that.
Yeah, it gets them engaged in the process. Again, they feel like they're doing something. They're getting value as they plug stuff into the software. They're seeing their financial life build. So it really gets them excited about and motivated about the process. And again, a lot of financial planning is also about coaching and keeping the client engaged, right? So I think trying to get them engaged early on in the process while also creating efficiencies, I think is a great win-win.
Yep. So what was the fourth one? I think I got you.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah. So once the data is entered, reviewing the data with the client, obviously making sure that it's accurate, and then really importantly, crystallize what their goals look like and making sure that we're on the same page as far as what do you want to accomplish, and making sure we're, again, working together to solve those goals. And then the next meeting is a strategy meeting. I think this is really the most critical meeting. This meeting, the way I position it, is it's all about education to the clients. With financial planning, we really live in a world of gray. There's very few things that are clear cut. You should always do this. You should never do this. It's really about trade-offs and about preferences. So our job is really to educate the client on those trade-offs and put them in the driver's seat to make a smart and informed financial decision. So by doing that, it just gives you open architecture to have those conversations with the client, see if an idea hits with them or it doesn't. And then ultimately getting to the action plan meeting, that's pen to paper. How do we actually make sure the client's taking action? And really that document for me is about mutual accountability. So it holds the client accountable to make sure they're doing the things that they need to be doing, and it holds us accountable as their financial planning team to make sure nothing slips through the cracks.
Hey, for everyone that's listening right now, if you're driving or you're sitting there, you don't have a pen and paper out, you got to go back and rewind this and listen to this. This is truly like a master class on doing planning with clients. So really good stuff, Jeremy.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So now we got the process, but behind the scenes, what's your team like? And how does your team, because we know that financial advisors, the way I look at it, and I remember when we started doing planning here, we had like 30 advisors go through the class. Mm-hmm. They all got their, planning certification, and then they sold the plan quickly. Yep. They were good advisors.
Yeah.
They sell this plan and then they're doing all this data entry. And I'm like, holy mackerel, we got to build a division here, because I want them, like a doctor, to see more people.
Right.
And so now we have this team, and tell me about your team.
Yeah. So very robust team, obviously. Yeah. That can be a barrier to entry for advisors with financial planning. I think the conception is that, well, that's a lot of work. Like how do I support that? And do I really want to go down that road? So we have a phenomenal infrastructure from helping advisors process the actual paperwork and payments and things like that, so they're not getting bogged down with paperwork. And then also people who will do the data entry on behalf of the advisor and behalf of the client. So if you're not doing, the digital onboarding, what I call, where the client's entering it, we have staff that can enter the data into the software for you. And then next level up are our consultants, really focusing on strategies, right? So looking at the case, looking at the opportunities, and seeing, all right, what strategies make sense, and then consulting with our product specialists to make sure we're looking at things from all angles. So we can help in-house, really, I say beginning to end, from an entire case design process. We can take that off of an advisor's plate, and really, like you said, they're the doctor, they show up, and they can leverage someone on our team, a consultant on our team, to help drive the software, right? We don't want the software to get in the way of helping the client. So how do you use the team to make that process as efficient as possible?
So if I'm a financial advisor and whatever tool you're using, I don't even have to know how to really use it. I have to be familiar with it.
Right.
But during the client meeting, I'll have someone assisting me saying, hey, like, can we show this scenario a little differently? Because that's what the client wants in that strategy session.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. We don't want advisors experts in software. That's not where their skills should be spent. So leveraging the team. And again, I'm very focused on, back to my original point of keeping clients engaged in the process. Pulling the software up on the screen and doing live interaction and financial planning really helps clients get engaged in the process of really, they see the impact of potential solutions or potential strategies or a potential issue that they didn't even realize was part of their financial plan. So it really gets them more engaged in the process. So again, it's a win-win all the way around.
And when financial advisors go through this process with you and your team, do they understand how to leverage that going forward, or is that a process too for them to, because advisors like to do things, and sometimes advisors like to do things to be busy when the busiest part is making an impact on a client's life, right? We want them to do more of that.
Right.
So,
yeah, I mean, I think there's multiple roles to my job overall. I mean, I think one of them is just educating advisors as far as what the financial planning process is. It doesn't have to be complicated. Like, how do we keep that easy? It's also how to best leverage the team and take advantage of all the resources that you have available to you. I also say, like you said, advisors like to do certain things. So we are very flexible as far as how we support advisors. So if advisors want to do data entry on their own for whatever reason, again, I don't think it's the best use of their time, but they can certainly do that. And they can use us on the back end to help with strategies and recommendations. And then the reverse is also true. Hey, you just want to use us for the grunt work, get the data into the software. I'm good. I'll do everything else on my own. We can support them that way too. So we give a lot of flexibility as far as how they want to engage, but I also do a lot of coaching of, hey, let's look at how to make your process more efficient, whether that's how you're positioning things to clients or how you're leveraging the team.
That's awesome. We had an advisor on the show last week that actually talked about sitting second seat to the head of planning or one of our product specialists, where they're sitting on the same side as the client. And does that happen often with you, where they're on the client side and they're questioning you?
Yeah.
But to help the client understand that they're in this with them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's a great dynamic for the advisor and client relationship. And I think that's really, frankly, the benefit of the Barnum platform is you have all these specialists, and letting the advisor bring in some of these specialists and let's hear this person out together and see if this is a good fit for you. So the advisor always gets to maintain that relationship. They're kind of the hub of that relationship. And then they can bring in these other ideas. And if the client doesn't like whatever that person said, or doesn't like that strategy, or doesn't want to go down the financial planning route, doesn't disrupt the advisor relationship. So I think it's a great dynamic.
Barnum Financial Group's Vice President of Retirement Planning Solutions, Nico Vamvakis.
Earlier on in your intro, you talked about annuities and, dispelling the myth around annuities. And I love that because I believe they have a major purpose. But for the people that are on here, I think what you're doing and what you're helping advisors do is you're taking these SMAs, and there's all kinds of thoughts in the industry, and I'd like to understand your view on this, where someone's saying put everything into this SMA, and what you're doing is, for lack of a better simplified answer, you're splitting tickets. So you're saying, this much is going to go in here and this much is going to go in this sleeve, and here's why. Can you talk about, help us, and for the younger advisors out there that have no idea, help us how that works and why, and dispel the myth for me.
Yeah, so it's really dependent because for annuities they can go all over the place, right? We've been talking about income annuities. Now we're seeing this big up and coming of structured RILA annuities that are really going to become the new norm in this product field. And then you see a lot of fixed annuities as well. So we could kind of touch on all three. But it's really when I'm sitting across from the client, how old are they? What are they looking for? What's important to them? What are they concerned about? And then that will help us determine, okay, well, we all believe that a large portion of your portfolio should be invested properly based on your risk tolerance. You need liquidity, right? So that's 60 or 70% of your overall asset. But now you have 30% of these assets, or you have an income need. So let's start with the income need. Let's fast forward to the future. Well, what guaranteed income sources do you have? You have Social Security. Do you have a pension? No? Okay. Do you have your expenses laid out? Okay, you do. Great. What are those expenses? Wonderful. Well, now what's your guaranteed income? Just Social Security. Well, 30% of your lifetime expenses, based on our analysis, is covered with guaranteed income. Like, now, is that enough? Now, depending on who you talk to, everyone has a different opinion. Some may say yes, some may say no, some may say 50%, 60%, or 70%. I let the advisor run their practice because that's on them to determine how much they want, as long as the numbers make sense. So we'll say, all right, well, now we could do one of two things. You could either allocate 30%, or we could back into what that income need should be. And by doing that, you're going to have to put X amount of a deposit down, defer it out, and this is when you're going to get to that number. Wonderful. That's strategy number one. But on the other side, you may have clients that are just looking to grow. They're not concerned about income. They're in their mid 40s, late 40s, early 50s, but they're also not ready to just buy equities. They're not ready to just be, and I'm just going to ride it out, whatever happens. So you want to diversify a little bit. So that's where this new structured annuity space has come into play, right? So what are some pros? There's relatively low to no fees. So clients love talking about that. There's really not much limitations on the upside based on today's conversation. So you can buy a major index and get all the returns, and you're setting it for 6 years, and you get some downside protection along the way with the buffers and caps. And we could dive into that if we need be, or we do that at a later date.
You already lost me.
Yeah, right. But so the point of that is you're looking for diversification. You're trying to give the client something that's going to be emotionally important to them. So by leveraging some of these vehicles with that protection and that upside, it fits very well when you look at the overall portfolio. Then if you want to take it a step further, you can almost buy little insurance benefits on top of these policies that if you think the market's going to take off, you capture the market upside, all that market upside, plus you get a little bit more growth. So, that's where my team really comes in, and I'm trying to understand what the advisor is telling me about the client, or I'm trying to understand directly from the client what they're looking for. And then we will match the products, we'll offer them and say, this is what I see. Do you think this makes sense?
Now, is there software that you use when you get into the details of this, or how's that work? And do the advisors have that at their fingertips? How's that all come together?
Yeah. So from the income one, we actually built our own internal software where we scan the entire marketplace. We scan the variable, which is kind of newer, but not many people are doing this, but we see how the riders work exactly. So internally, our advisors can go on and within seconds run quotes out in the industry on every product that they have available to them and figure out exactly what the premium needs to be inside of said carrier to get this outcome from an income standpoint in the future.
Wow. And it's just a click of the button.
Click of the button. I think it's 5 inputs, hit enter, and then you have every company that you need.
It's amazing. And advisors can do that on their own.
They can do it on their own.
Wow. That's pretty cool. Thank you for listening to Small Steps, Big Wins. Please rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Every bit helps. You can also follow us on Instagram at Small Steps, Big Wins.
All opinions expressed by the program participants are solely their current opinions and do not reflect the opinions their respective parent companies or affiliates or the companies with which the program participants are affiliated. Investments or strategies mentioned in this program may not be suitable for you, and you should make your own independent decision regarding them. This material does not take into account your particular investment objectives, financial situation, or needs, and is not intended as recommendations appropriate for you. You should strongly consider seeking advice from your own investment advisor. Securities and investment advisory services offered through qualified registered representatives of MML Investor Services, LLC. Member SIPC, 6 Corporate Drive, Shelton, Connecticut, 06484, telephone number 203-513-6000.